How's it going, everybody? My name is Unpause, aka Ben, aka Pug, aka whatever you want to call me, and today, finally here, my top 15 albums of the decade. I do apologise for the lack of videos recently. I was very ill and I was sort of not able to speak very well, so I haven't done as many as I would like to of the individual videos, but I might see if I've got some time afterwards to go into a bit more detail about some of them, especially some of the top 5. So this is the top 15. There will be only one album per artist in the list, because otherwise it would sort of be dominated by like 6 or 7 different artists, and that's not very interesting. So one album per artist, but when I get to a certain artist, I will say if there were a few sort of duplicates I would have wanted from them. So down here it's going to say the name and the song. Up here there'll be a picture of the album, and yeah, let's get straight into it with the number 15 album. So at number 15 I have gone with Arcade Fire's The Suburbs. Came out very early in the decade, at the start of 2010 I believe. Quite a long album, an hour and 4 minutes I believe, and 16 tracks. But yeah, it's a very sort of retro feeling album. It's got sort of like, if you told me it came out in like the 80s and 90s, kind of like Radiohead style, Red Hot Chili Peppers type music, I would have believed you. It's got that sort of like classic feel to it, and it's a classic album if you ask me. It's definitely served the test of time well, and it's one I don't hear lots of people talking about, but when I do hear people talking about it, they all sort of agree that it is done to a very high standard and the quality of it's very high, and all the songs sort of feel in place on the album. The sort of starting with The Suburbs, the track, and then ending with The Suburbs continued is a nice way to sort of loop the whole thing round, and I think it's got a very nice sort of feel to it of all the songs. The vocal deliveries are very good, the instrumentals are very good, and they match very well. It's a very fun listen, it's quite an easy listen, and it's got some nice topics. The discussions are quite nice, sort of reminisce is sort of the way I'd put it about the album. I know I'm quite young, so I've not got a whole lot to reminisce on, but it's a very good album. It's a very sort of classic rock album. It's very enjoyable, and yeah, easily one of the albums of the decade for me. That is my number 15. Moving on to number 14. At number 14, here it is, keep confusing the sides, we have Taboo by Denzel Curry. When I made the individual video for this, I wasn't sure if it was going to make the list, but sort of going back and listening to it again, it definitely is. It's got some of my favourite songs, not only of the year it came out, but of the decade as well, mainly Sirens and Cloud Cobain and Vengeance particularly being some of my favourite songs of all time, I suppose. I just love Vengeance, and the lyrical content of Sirens is incomparable. The album was great. The sort of 3 sections was a good idea. The lyrical content and Denzel's flow is just brilliant. It just sort of shows that he's definitely one to watch, up and coming, and got so much more potential with his future releases. And yeah, Taboo made me very excited for everything he's going to drop. And it sort of showed his versatility as well, being able to do sort of slower songs like Black Balloon, not slower, but more sort of timid and more enjoyable songs like Black Balloons, to more topical songs like Sirens, to then hard, aggressive bangers like Vengeance and Black Metal Terrorist. It just showed how versatile Denzel really is, and yeah, it's definitely one that deserves a spot in my eyes. And yeah, comes in at number 14. On to number 13. Coming in at number 13, we have King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards, Nonagon Infinity, their 2016 release. Only 9 songs, but the album does go on forever. The transitions between every song, and from the last song to the first song, it's such a cool concept. It's such a creative concept, and the songs are so fun. And the fact that most times you get a cool transition, it's usually sort of slowed down a bit, but these just end on a note and start on the next one, on like a guitar riff or something, and it's just incredible. The amount of energy that the album consistently has, it is just non-stop. It is fun to listen to, and it's a fantastic concept. It's such a unique one that I haven't heard before, and I'd love to hear more of. But the main thing is that it's not only a wonderful concept, it is executed perfectly. There is no doubt that this should be an album of the decade for me. because there's not anything else like it. If there are other albums like this and I haven't heard of them, comment them, let me know, and I'll go and listen to them on repeat, because this is fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it, and you'll stay listening to it. Right, on to number 12. Coming in at number 12, we have the original Run the Jewels. My favourite of the three. It is quite hard to choose. They are very, very solid. All three of them. This is my favourite, the first one. Of the list of albums of the decade, it's probably got the most amount of songs I don't enjoy on it, with sort of Twin Hype Back, Get It, No Calm Down. I'm not a huge fan of any of them, but the songs I do enjoy, Run the Jewels, Sea Legs, Christmas Miracle, DDFH, they're all fantastic. The flow from Killer Mike, the production, and the verses from LP, the fact that he can produce that well, because the production on every song is so ahead of its time, and then the verses from him as well, it's just incredible that he's so talented at both, and it's got such a unique sound to it. The sort of mix of like very high production value rap isn't something you hear all that often, and I'm a big fan of it. And as Kendrick Lamar said in, what song was it? Hood Politics, maybe? If everyone wanted rap to be good, then Killer Mike would be platinum. And he's just fantastic on this album. Definitely an album of the decade for me. It's one of the best rap duos ever. And yeah, no doubt it should be on there for me. On to number 11. In at number 11, we have the newest release from MGMT, Little Dark Age. Their first album in 10 years? Well, first album in a long time, and yeah, it's brilliant. Only came out a couple of years ago, but already a classic for me. MGMT just have such a unique and perfected sound. They just seem to be able to do exactly what they're intending to do, and the level of production on every song is fantastic. The incredibly catchy opener of She Works Out Too Much, followed by Little Dark Age, which I can never get the ending of that song out of my head, leading into one of the craziest songs I've ever heard with When You Die, which is just a nutty song. The concept of the song is incredible, and the execution is even better. I just love every song on Little Dark Age. Time spent looking at my phone it's just incredible, and there's so many amazingly produced songs, and the concept from the album is brilliant, and it's a fantastic return to form for MGMT. The fact that they didn't make any music for so long, or didn't release any music for so long, and then they can just come back and just drop something this solid and this consistent throughout the album. It's just brilliant. It's just fantastic. It's so fun. It's such a unique sound. The sort of techno, pop, punk sound that they have is so unique to them, and it's just executed perfectly. If you haven't listened to much of Little Dark Age, listen to it. I'd particularly recommend Little Dark Age, the song, When You Die, and TSLAMP. It's just brilliant. There's so many good songs, and they're just all incredibly catchy, whilst being, some of them are just horrendously dark. The lyrics are just, if you listen to the song, it sounds so upbeat and happy, but lyrically they're not, and it's such a unique sound, and I love it. It's brilliant, but it does just miss out on the number 10 spot, missing out on the top 10, which goes to, in at number 10. In at number 10, claiming that spot, is Bon Iver's self-titled album. Whilst it might not be the best Bon Iver album to me, it's got to be Forever Ago. Everyone knows, but it is fantastic. The consistency, again, from start to finish, it is fantastic, and it's such an incredibly emotional album. Perth is a fantastic song. Holocene is one of the best Bon Iver songs ever, and one of the most listened to, I believe, and for good reason. And the amount of emotion in Justin Vernon's voice throughout the album, and the amount of emotion that's matched from the music, whether it's just a lone guitar or trumpets accompanying a piano, it's just fantastic how much emotion that the band can draw into the music, and it's got such a unique style, which is mainly from Justin Vernon's voice. No one else seems to sound like him, whether he's doing like a song like Hinham where he uses more his natural voice, like a very low pitch, or a song like Holocene where he uses a more high pitched voice. He's just an incredible talent. The amount of vocal ability that this man has is fantastic, and it's definitely an album of the decade for me. It's such a unique sound. It's fantastic, and just the amount of emotion in the album is unparalleled. It's brilliant. If you haven't listened to Bon Iver, I said it in my review of the album, listen to it. It's fantastic. Easily one of the albums of the decade for me. And into the number 9 spot, where we have Rockhampton's Saturation 3. One of my favourite albums ever. Possibly the most fun album I've ever heard. The opener, Boogie, is just mind-blowing. As soon as I heard that, I just couldn't wait to listen to the rest of the album. That leading straight into Zipper, which is fantastic, has some of the best moments from all the members on the group, with other songs on the album like Bleach, which is one of their best songs ever, arguably their best song ever. Songs like Team, the Bareface's voice on that is incredible. Sister Nation being their most unique song, with the mix of the like Death Grip style production at the beginning leading into washed out reverb, just beautiful ending. The whole album is just full of different styles that somehow complement each other. All of them work well together despite the fact that they're all so different, and it's just fantastic seeing a mix of different styles that flow together somehow, and it doesn't feel like there's a big jump at any moment. It seems like it starts with these fun, hyped up songs and then sort of gets lower down before building back up into more fun songs like Hottie, or more emotional songs like Rental and Bleach, or Alaska, Stains. There are just so many good songs on this album, and for me there isn't a bad song on it, and that's one of the key features for me. Every song is enjoyable, and the album just seems to fly past when you listen to it. There's so many fun elements to it, whilst also having some sort of topical lyrics, especially on Team and Nation, and it's just brilliant. For me, it's their best album. It was tough to choose between this and Ginger. Ginger and this are both very different styles, but it might be, with Saturation 3 being an older album, but Bleach and Boogie are probably two of my favourite songs of all time, so it was hard not to give it to Saturation 3. And yeah, definitely takes a spot in my top 15. Could have been higher up even. It was very tough to choose between the next sort of 3 albums where they should all be ranked. But yeah, this is my number 9, Saturation 3, leading to number 8. In at number 8, we have rapper, writer, producer, director, just all-round genius, Childish Gambino's Awaken My Love. For me, this is the most underrated album of the decade. The fact that I haven't seen this album in more album of the decade lists is just mind-blowing to me. It is fantastic. From possibly the most underrated song of the decade for me, Me and Your Mama, being a fantastic opening. The beat switch in the middle to Gambino's vocals, it's just brilliant, and every song is just fantastic. The mix of funk and soul and bits of rap is fantastic. Obviously Redbone being a classic, everyone loves Redbone, but songs like Have Some Love, Boogeyman, Riot, Terrified, Baby Boy, California, every song is it's just got such a style that it's just fun to listen to. There aren't any sad songs, whilst there might be emotional songs like Baby Boy or The Night Me and Your Mama Met. None of them are sad. They're all fun to listen to. They're all just the amount of talent that feels like it went into this album, with every production being incredible. The singing is just mind-blowing. The first few times I listened to Redbone, I didn't know that it was Childish Gambino singing. I just thought he had got someone else to do it for him. But the fact that that is his voice, unaltered, is incredible. And that it's mind-blowing. Listening to Camp and Because the Internet, and then the jump to Awaken My Love, going from sort of like an immature rapper to this is just, it's crazy. The amount of progression he has shown throughout his career, through such a short career it's such an incredible feat, and every song is brilliant. I've heard people saying it's sort of ripping off a few different artists, mainly Bootsy Collins, but he's been credited for some of them. It's more of an homage, and it's a fantastic one. It doesn't bother me if music sounds like other music, as long as the music sounds good, and this sounds incredible. It was hard putting this at number 8. It was hard, sort of every single spot after this. It was very difficult deciding what should go where, and I even sort of feel like I'm underrating it, putting it at number 8, because I think this is just such a fantastic album. It's easily a 9 out of 10 for me. Every song is something that I want to listen to on repeat, and I can't overstate how much I enjoy this album. If you've not listened to this album, listen to this album. It is brilliant. You'll be hooked after the first song, and there's no looking back from there. Easily one of the albums of the decade for me, and it deserves so much more recognition. That's all I can say about it, really. Into number 7, where we have Kids See Ghosts, self-titled project. What needs to be said? What can I say that hasn't already been said about this album? It is just, it's brilliant. It's one of the best sort of shorter albums, only coming in at 24 minutes, I believe, with 7 tracks. It's brilliant. Feel the Love is the only one I don't absolutely adore, but it's still a fun opener, and it sort of just shows the side of Kanye that everyone loves to see, and Pusha T's verse is great. But sort of after that, it just feels like there's no looking back. Free is one of my favourite songs ever. Ty Dolla $ign's vocals are just... I didn't know he had that sort of vocal ability. And hearing him on it was incredible. He fit perfectly. The lyrics are just brilliant. And it's such a fun song. The sort of power that is behind it is fantastic. And every song is just brilliant. Reborn is one of my favourite songs of all time. It's easily up there for my songs of the decade. It's fantastic. The sort of the emotional feeling that song sort of provides, it's brilliant. It's one of the best songs I've ever heard. And Cudi and Kanye both just do it so much justice. You know, if a song starts with Kid Cudi humming, you know it's going to be great, and the whole project is fantastic. And whilst it was hard to put Awaken My Love that low, albums like this are one of the reasons why. Whilst it's easier to make a short album fantastic, this is just consistently brilliant. Every song is enjoyable. Some of the songs have some incredible lyrics, and songs like Kids See Ghosts, Cudi Montage, and Reborn are just brilliant. The whole thing is brilliant. What can I say that hasn't been said? Just the fusion of like rock, hip hop, rap. It's brilliant. I keep saying brilliant, but there isn't a better way to describe this album. And it's not for everyone. There's a lot of sort of experimental features, but for me, every single experimental thing that they test on this album works perfectly. It's arguably the best project Kanye West has attached his name to, but there's one better for me, which you'll see later on, which leads us into number 6, which is the Kanye West album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. God, it was difficult putting this album this low. Ironic that it's at number 6, but this is a fantastic album to me. It's definitely Kanye's best album this decade. If I were to say ever, it would be tough to choose between this and Late Registration and College Dropout, but we'll save that discussion for another day. For now, this is the best Kanye West album this decade, if you ask me. The story is brilliant. The arguments that this album isn't good unless you care about Kanye West's life are just kind of moot points to me. The opening track of Dark Fantasy is brilliant. Gorgeous, excuse me. Gorgeous kind of feels like a predecessor to Kids See Ghosts, whether it's the mix of Kanye West and Kid Cudi or the guitar beat going throughout it. It's a song that I feel like gets overlooked because of how many good songs there are on this album. But there are so many iconic songs that came from this album. Power, All of the Lights, Monster, Runaway. Those 4 songs they get talked about so often, and for good reason. They're all fun to listen to, but also brilliantly produced, with Runaway arguably being the greatest Kanye West song ever. It's fantastic. The opening notes, the amount of sort of hype I've seen at like concerts and things just from hearing those couple of notes at the beginning, because everyone loves Runaway. It is easily maybe not easily the most emotional song Kanye West has ever produced, because the whole of 808s and Heartbreak and Ghost Town are it's hard to sort of overlook them, but it's one of his best. And the sort of the ending with the guitar replacing the vocals is fantastic, and it really just has such a classic sound to it. Obviously this album is nearly 10 years old now, but each song just sort of feels iconic. And whether it's because of the reception this album has received, or whether it's just because every song is brilliant, it's kind of hard to tell. But this album is just, it's one of the greatest sort of artworks in terms of music. And the movie that accompanies it, Kanye West just sort of showed that even when he was going through a bit of a crazy time, which led to this album, the outcome of it and the sort of genius that Kanye West is, despite all of his quirks and bit of craziness, it is a fantastic album, and it is such a fun listen with some beautiful moments in there too. If you have not somehow listened to this album, do it. It is worth it, and it is brilliant. And now we are on to the top 5, my 5 best albums of the decade. This was very tough to choose, but kicking it off at number 5 is none other than The Money Store by Death Grips. What an iconic album. Their first full release. It was very difficult to choose whether this or any of their albums were the best one. Ex-Military, Powers That Be, Government Plate, sorry. They've just released a lot of brilliant projects, but for me, excuse me, this is easily my favourite, easily the most consistent, with every song being brilliant, opening up with Get Got, and then there are just a myriad of consistently good tracks with some incredible tracks, some of the best songs of the decade, Get Got, I've Seen Footage, Punk Wait, The Fever, Hacker, especially Hacker and Punk Wait for me. It's just so unique. There is nothing that sounds like Death Grips, and nothing in my eyes has been able to sort of recapture the sound of The Money Store. Not even Death Grips themselves. I've never felt that they've quite matched the level of raw craziness and sheer enjoyability at the same time as The Money Store. None of their other albums have quite been the same for me, but I'm very glad we have The Money Store. The fact that this album came out nearly 8 years ago, it is such an album that's so ahead of its time, for the fact that no one else has come close to this sort of sound. Not even Death Grips themselves. Like I said, it's just so unique and so experimental. Nothing else feels like it's taken this many risks in an album, but nothing else feels like it's paid off that much. Every sound feels different than the one before, but somehow they all seem to fit a consistent theme. And whilst the lyrics are incredibly cryptic and hard to understand, they also feel like they tell some sort of strange story in each song and overall as an album. And for me, it's just something that I've never listened to anything else that gives me the same feeling as this album, and I honestly doubt I ever will. It was very difficult to put this album so low down, but it's just fantastic. There's nothing else like Death Grip. Seeing it at number 5 might seem like, that's quite low down, but for its sheer it's just the sheer amount of just craziness that this album throws out there on every song is just unmatched. And it will not be everyone's cup of tea. When I started listening to it, it was not whatsoever. I hated it at first, or I only liked a couple of songs. But each listen, I liked each song more and more, to the point where I now love every song, and it is fantastic. Death Grips might not be for you, but if you don't enjoy it, I feel like everyone has to at least admire the production. The level of creativity that's gone into each song it's brilliant. If you haven't listened to Death Grips, maybe don't, because I feel like everyone who would enjoy Death Grips has probably heard Death Grips. But either way, I think it's brilliant, and it is easily one of the top 5 albums of the decade for me. Into number 4, where we have Vertigo by Eden. One of my favourite albums ever. It sort of holds a special place for me. It might not be everyone's favourite type of music, but I absolutely love it. It's probably one of the less popular albums on this list, but it's very high up for me. I think everything that Eden has released is fantastic, and I'm very excited for his release later on this year. It's just such a unique sound, whether it's because I've seen it live or because of how long I've been listening to Eden's music, but I just can't sort of work out why I love this album so much. The sort of unique style of production, and the fact that everything that you hear is made by Eden, whether it's a piano, a guitar, some 808s, some techno production, the singing, bits that sound like features but are his voice altered. Everything is done by Eden, and it's just brilliant. I love every single song on this album. There isn't a single song that I would give less than an 8 out of 10. They are all fantastic, and there are so many 10 out of 10 songs for me on this album. The consistency is just mind-blowing, and I just love it. I love the amount of emotion that Eden can put into his voice. I love that he can make fun songs like Take Care or Love Not Wrong. I love that he can make sort of slower songs like Wrong or Forever Over or Lost and Found, or whether he can make sort of more commercial songs like Gold and Crash. It's just sort of so versatile, and from his 6-year career making music, I have yet to find a single Eden song I have not enjoyed listening to, and he is easily one of my favourite artists of all time, probably my most listened to artist of all time. The only reason this album's lower down is because it doesn't quite have the status and sort of the classic status that the next 3 albums have. It's one of my personal favourites of all time, but the quality might not be as high as some of the next 3 albums, but it's just fantastic. It's always going to be an album that's sort of special to me, and whilst a lot of people don't enjoy the style of music that Eden makes, I do. I think it's just something that I love, and whilst it's probably a weird choice, some people are going to view it as being especially so high up on the list. Every time I listen to it, I just sort of remember how much I love it, and there is no doubt that it belongs this high up for me. My number 4. Into the final 3. This was the hardest part for me, picking the order, and any of these 3 albums coming up, it could have had a different album from the artist, but kicking it off, we have Tyler, the Creator's Igor. It was so very hard to put this album at number 3 because I absolutely love it. From the first time I listened to it, as soon as I heard Igor's theme, I was like, this is going to be a fantastic album. The fact that Earthquake, possibly the most popular song on the album, is... It's so hard for me to use the word least favourite in any context of this album, but that might be my least favourite song, just because there's so many good songs. Earthquake would be my least favourite, and that song's still like a 9 out of 10 for me. Every song is a 9 or a 10 out of 10 for me, even Eagle's theme, the opener. But there's so many tracks that are some of my favourite songs ever, and easily like what I feel like would be some of Tyler the Creator's best songs. What's Good, New Magic One being some of the best full-on rap songs he's done, but with incredible production. Are We Still Friends and I Don't Love You Anymore and Gone Gone being more emotional and sort of showing a more mature side of Tyler. and then songs like I Think, Running Out of Time, and A Boy Is a Gun having just incredible production. Every song has something unique to it, but the way this album flows together as an album is mind-blowing. The transitions to each song are fantastic, and the way the tone slowly builds and moves is almost told like a story, like a TV show. The fact that you have this consistent story that is so easy to understand because it's laid out for you so clearly, with Earthquake and I Think sort of him noticing the person he's talking about, leading to songs like New Magic Wand where he's going crazy about thinking about the person, to sort of the crescendo of What's Good, and then the sort of realization that it's not meant to be with the run of Gone Gone through to Are We Still Friends. It's just so well done whilst also sounding really fun. If the music behind the story is rubbish, then the album is rubbish, but the music behind this story is as good as the story itself. Every song is enjoyable to listen to, and they all have such a unique sound, but they're all connected by sort of the amount of synths that are used on this album, which are just used so well. Whether it's the opener on Eagle's theme, whether it's the whole production of Running Out of Time, whether it's the synth type beat on What's Good, it's just so well produced. And the fact that Tyler did almost everything himself, all of the writing, all of the performances, regards of a few features, but very light features, but every feature does elevate each song. They're all used very well. To the production is mind-blowing and has such a unique style to it. I've not heard anything with this sort of futuristic production, and it's easily his best album for me. It was tough to overlook Flower Boy, and Flower Boy would have been high up in my list, but Igor is just an incredible album, and it was easily my favourite album of 2019. Nothing else came close, and it was tough to put it at only number 3. It was very tough to choose between number 2 and number 3, but it's just because they're both brilliant. But Igor is just fantastic. If you've not listened to it, there will be at least one song that you enjoy, because the songs are so versatile, but whilst also sticking to this clearly laid out theme, and it just feels like so much thought went into the production, and seeing it live was just incredible. This whole album, it's a benchmark as to what concept albums should be like, and it is just such a fun listen. And if you haven't heard Igor, listen to Igor. And it was very hard to put it at number 3, but at number 2, which we'll come to, probably no surprise to anyone, one of the greatest albums of all time. It is, of course, none other than Frank Ocean's Blonde. This will probably come as a surprise to no one, whether you know me or not. If you know me, you know I love anything by Frank Ocean. If you don't know me, you know that most people love anything by Frank Ocean, because he is an incredible artist, and Blonde doesn't even feel like his peak. Blonde feels like there were still some, not necessarily weak tracks, but less polished ones, and it's still my number 2 for the decade. The man's voice is just incredible. Everything Frank Ocean does is so unique, and the hardest part was picking Blonde or Channel Orange, but I think Blonde is a fair bit better. It just sort of feels more collected, and it's just got so many amazing songs with Ivy, Pink and White, White Ferrari, Self-Control, Nights, Siegfried, Godspeed. Every song is brilliant, and whilst it might not show a story like songs like Igor or Beautiful Dark Twisted Fancy or Good Kid Mad City have, it has a just fantastic sound. The production is so key to the album, whilst also being less in your face than some songs. It's more calm, and it lets Frank's voice shine. And whilst I think songs like Nikes are brilliant, it's one of my least favourite on the album, for the sole fact that it distorts Frank Ocean's voice. And hearing the live version of it where he sings with his normal voice just sort of shows me, like, if there's one thing you should never do, it's change Frank Ocean's voice. Why would you change the sound of the man who has possibly the greatest voice on earth? It is brilliant. The fact that Self-Control is probably one of my favourite songs of all time, and I can't even decide if that's my favourite song on the album, should say a lot to you. Nights is one of the greatest songs ever. The beat switch is iconic, and it's showing the switch of tone from the first half to the second half of the album, with the first half sort of being a bit more fun and upbeat, and the second half being incredibly emotional and almost sad. It's hard to say anything about Blonde that people haven't already discussed, because it is, and rightly so, one of the most talked about albums ever, because there is so many positive things you can say about the album. And like I said, it doesn't even feel like Frank's hit his peak. The new album that's hopefully coming out soon, with DHL In My Room being released, it'll be incredibly interesting to see where he goes next, because Blonde felt so similar to Channel Orange whilst also feeling like something completely different and something completely unique. And yeah, it was hard to pick between this and Igor for number 2, but I think Blonde is just, it might just be because it's older, so it feels like it's been my favourite for longer, but it is just, it's incredible. Everything Frank Ocean does is incredible, and this album is, there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like Frank Ocean. I've not heard any songs where I thought, wow, this reminds me of Frank Ocean, because what he does, no one else is able to do. And that is leading into the number 1. If you haven't worked it out by now, it is, of course, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Before I talk about To Pimp a Butterfly, I need to talk about the hardest decision I had while thinking about this video, and that was whether number 1 would be To Pimp a Butterfly or Good Kid, Mad City. To me, they are the 2 best albums of the decade, but what was sort of key to me was I was thinking, is Good Kid, Mad City better than Blonde? But there was no doubt for me that To Pimp a Butterfly was better than Blonde. This is, to me, whilst I haven't listened to, obviously I haven't listened to every album ever, and there are some old albums that I need to listen to, but from what I've heard, this is not only the greatest album of the decade, this is the greatest album of all time. I'm not going to say too much about it now, because at some point I'm going to do a in-depth, longer review that will probably be at least like 20 minutes, because there is so much I want to say about this album. I cannot discuss it in such a short period of time, but it is just, it's incredible. This is the type of album you use to set benchmarks of what music should be. The concept behind it is brilliant. The comments on America, race, culture, how people view life are so inspired, and the sound of the album is just, it's so unique, and the fusion of jazz and funk, soul, hip-hop, R&B, rap, poetry, it mixes so many different things, and it mixes them all perfectly. It is the perfect mixture of sound. Every feature is used exactly how it should be, from Bilal to Thundercat to George Clinton, Snoop Dogg, Rhapsody. Everyone on this album fits where they should go, and they add so much to their respective songs. Each song on this album, for me, is at least a 10 out of 10 song. Wesley's Theory is the perfect opener. For Free is so fun, and it's such a crazy interlude, but it's so enjoyable. And the ending, Saying You're No King, leading into King Kunta, which is one of the most enjoyable songs I've ever listened to. And I can't discuss every song, because it would take me too long to discuss every good feature about every song, because there are so many. And the hardest part is choosing which song on this album would be the best, because you could make a fair argument for King Kunta, Black of the Berry, All Right, You Ain't Gotta Lie, These Walls, How Much a Dollar Cost, and every song seems to have an opposite as well, whether it's You to I, For Free to For Sale, King Kunta to Mortal Man. Everything has an opposite, and they fit together to make the perfect album, if you ask me. And it's not a short album. It's not like Kendrick took the easy route and went, I've got 10 good songs here. He went, no, this album needs to be perfect, and he made 16 perfect songs that have come together. And I don't like using the word perfect because I feel like things can always get better, but I can't see how an album could get better than this. The concept is incredible, telling more of the end of that poem on every other song, leading up to Mortal Man, where he reads the whole poem, and only then is it revealed that he is reading the poem to Tupac. And the conversation between Tupac and Kendrick is mind-blowing. It's one of the greatest plot twists, I suppose you'd call it, in music history. And that one song ties together the whole album perfectly. And not only is each album incredible in the context of the album, they're all fantastic to listen to on their own. You could listen to the album on shuffle and it'd still be just as good. You could listen to each song as a single and they'll be just as good. But it feels like every decision that went into the making of this album was the correct one. Whether it was using the live version of I with the discussion and the sort of poem at the end, rather than the single release of I, with the live version being so much better and more enjoyable and fitting the album so much better. Whether it was, having the certain ordering of songs that make the tone shift either perfectly, or the contrast between like a song like You Ain't Gotta Lie going into Black of the Berry. It's such a strong contrast, but it fits perfectly. And I'm gonna sort of kind of leave it at this because I want to do a full in-depth discussion of To Pimp a Butterfly, because it is the greatest album, not only of the decade, but for me, ever. If you have not listened to Pimp a Butterfly, listen to it and go in with open arms. Don't be expecting an easy listen, because it's not. While some songs are easy to listen to and fun, others are harsh and abrasive, and the lyrics especially make the album a tough listen at times. But it is a perfect album. This album is easily my album of the decade. If you disagree, let me know why. Let me know what your top 5 albums of the decade would be in the comments. I want to see sort of how other people view the decade of music and what would be up there for them. That is all for this video, and I'll hopefully do some more about the individual albums. Hopefully those will be coming out soon. But thank you very much for watching. If you're still here at the end, I'm very impressed because it's been quite a long video. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.